Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast, where we will try bring you some sanity amongst a period of mass depression amongst our fan base. But all is not lost, and we will try explain to you why we think that way. But there are some fair criticisms we need to address today based on that performance. And to discuss it with me, we have Ben. How are you, Ben?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Great to have you on again, mate. And we got Si. How are you, Si?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Good to see you, Jim.
Good to see you too. Good to see you too. So, guys, where else to start? It was a marginal defeat on paper in terms of a scoreline, but a heavy defeat, I think, in terms of performance against Bournemouth. The performance as a summary, do we start? It's pretty hard. Well, let's try summarize it, shall we? Si, you're rubbing your hands, so I think I have to start with it.
Really, thanks. Okay, fine. Where to start? It was after the first 15 minutes. It was painful, and just before we started, Ben and I were having a bit of a chat, and that last half hour was just dreadful. It really was. I mean, and I'm not going to start wetting the bed. I'm not going to start, calling for heads to roll and stuff. But that was a really, really painful watch from against a team that really know what they're doing at home. They clearly are solid at their place. They beat the Goons. They beat City. They've done us now, and that 1-0 doesn't do them justice either, does it? I think what was their XG? 3.7 XG. I think they had last night.
Yeah,
and but for Forster, although Forster put us in trouble a couple of times with the passing out, but for a couple of decent saves as well, that could have been 3 or 4 quite comfortably. And we really produced nothing of any note really going forward outside that first 15 minutes. It was a tough watch. The midfield was all over the place. Against teams like this, I think we look really lightweight in the middle without Decky in the middle. And him being out on the right, I don't think it added much. Johnson out on the left is quite ineffective. You would have think, with hindsight, would you have started Timo out on the left and had Johnson on the right and Decky in the middle, maybe? But yeah, it was a really tough watch. And the barrage of crap that I'm getting from Chelsea, Arsenal, and West Ham supporters today probably justified. To be fair, I just got to put my hands up and take it, because it was a 1-0 battering really, and we just got to suck it up, and move on.
Indeed. Ben, do you have much to add to that?
Not really. No, I think that's all. There's no real sugarcoating that one, is there? It was a bad watch. It was always likely to be a difficult watch, and yes, there's some valid context, but yeah, I went into it fearing the worst. I did hear the only crumb of comfort I had going in was I saw some of the Bournemouth sort of preview guys saying, oh well, yeah, we create a lot of chances, but we don't always take them. You guys, all you're going to need is a couple of chances. You take one of those, you might get a result, but we didn't create that much. As you say, we looked too open. They got through us way too easily. Some of the selection choices, limited though we were, didn't really work. And it could have been much, much worse, and probably should have been. So yeah, no sugarcoating it. Very bad performance. Ironically, the result actually is quite good given that game. Like a 1-0 loss is probably the best we could have hoped for out of that.
Yes, and the Bournemouth fans going into that were saying all season's been a repeated pattern for them. It's been dominating games, not taking their chances, and they're waiting for that first, massive win. And today I was speaking to a Bournemouth fan, Simon, who runs Talking Cherries, and he was saying the same. He said, people don't realise we're playing like this most weeks, and we're only coming out of wins of like 1 or 2-0, and people are letting us go under the radar. But Areola's doing a fantastic job. Now, that's not an excuse for us, because we are a style of play that equally demands front foot football to be successful, and we were completely outplayed, completely beaten. They had far more legs than us. I just felt like it looked like a team that was just bereft of options. And I guess the excuses can all roll in, and we have to give some caveat to the detail. That is, we've got Odebear, Richarlison, Van der Ven, Bentancur, and I think that's on long-term absentees at the moment. I think there might be one other I've just forgotten there. So once you get one injury from that point, you're always thin. You've lost 5 of your bench from the start. And then you're into kind of the kids that we thought, they'll get an odd League Cup game. They're now pivotal players in the squad that are going to have to play 60 minutes or try turn a game around in the last 30 minutes in the Premier League. So, yeah. But guys, do we point the finger a little bit? The debate now is, was the mistake going for too many young players in the transfer window, which leaves us now with a lack of senior options in these games? Archie Gray at right back was a discussion. Si, do you think of that?
Yeah, this hindsight's 2020, right? So we're sitting here now talking about what we know's happened and looking back at the decision process through that lens. I think at the time it seemed quite exciting. There was some criticism in the summer about we needed to go for. We were talking about on the pod about an experienced six. But with Bentancur coming back and Bissouma started to play some decent football again this season, that started to look not so critical. But now that Bentancur's out for 7 games, that puts us a bit thin there. But that's not where our weakness is, I don't think, in the middle of the park. It's we've now got 3 centre halves injured. Davis is a hamstring again, another hamstring, so he's going to be out for weeks. Yep. So I think Romero might be back on Sunday, but that pairing of Romero and Dragusin doesn't fill you with a huge amount of confidence, right? Because they're very, very similar players. Could we have gone for more experience? Yeah, I think we could have done. But then if we didn't get the injuries we've got and these youngsters start flying, like Odegaard had a great first couple of games. If he hadn't have got that injury and carried on this season, we'd have been saying what a great signing that was, how we've nicked him out under the nose of all the other people that were looking at him. So hindsight, yes, we could have got some more experience and maybe we overloaded with the youngsters. But at the time, it seemed like a decent enough policy. I think building for the future is absolutely the right thing. I think we need to supplement with some experience now. I think, we can't have another summer of youngsters, 17, 18-year-old signings. We've got to get some ready now in that, certainly, I think, midfield and left wing. I think Sonny's coming towards the latter end of his career, and I think this season's probably going to be the last time he's a starter.
Yeah, and I was shot down for that prediction by many. But anyway, Ben, I think, so just on that point, I was going to lead this on to a question for Ben, but how much should we, the question is for you, Ben, sorry, but how much should we be spending if we spend 150 million a season on average, net spend, right? How much of that should go into senior players versus young players? Because when I look back at the last season, it seemed like a reasonable balance to me that 65 million went on Solanke, was it 30 million went on Odegaard, and then
40 on Gray, was it?
40 on Gray, and then there was a couple of small transfers. So you'd say Solanke's in his prime, ready-made senior player. Great. Odegaard is ready to contribute to the squad if he's fit. Gray, is contributing to the squad. So, but you'd say he's not ready to contribute on a regular basis, starting and influence games, but he has value to add. And then what we did is we went for couple more prospecty type players in the background who were cheaper, right? On top of that. So to me, that feels like 2/3 of the budget went into players who can play now. Is that still not the right balance? But should we be going, right, we don't have time for this right now. Let's put 90% of the budget into getting 2 or 3 players who could just get into that first team squad now? Or how would you lay that out? And yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I liked it. Well, I gave it a pretty good window sort of rating it. Everyone's doing their out of 10s, and I think I gave it a 7 because the outgoings were very good. I thought we did a lot of the hard work clearing the decks. And the incomings, individually, I like all of them. Like you say, you can see why we've signed them. I think they're good players. I think they fit what we need. But yeah, the balance, and it is hindsight. The balance does look it's skewed a bit too much towards the players who'll make a difference in a bit this season, but mainly in 2 seasons, 3 seasons. So I do think maybe we should be aiming towards the sort of 70-80%. Certainly in the next window or the next 2 windows, I would actually go into the pretty much 100% of the budget. Just stick it. We've got an army of talented youngsters now. We've got more coming through. We've got Yang coming in. We've got Gray's young, Odegaard, as you say, still quite young. So there's a lot of players now.
Vuskovic coming in as well.
Vuskovic is there. Yeah, exactly. So I would go for, and we're not talking. They don't need to be 28, 29 years old, but I would now focus pretty much all of our budget in the next 2 windows on players that are starting quality, that, you know, maybe 22 to 25 years old. We're still going to get a good 6-8 years out of them if they do well, and they want to stay. But I wouldn't do any more of those signings. I think when things are all steady, you do want a balance. But for the moment, it does feel a bit like we maybe went just a bit too far for the future players, and we should maybe move a little bit further back towards the experienced players just for the next few.
It's another area, though, I think, if we're going to make that model work, because a good experienced player, let's say someone like Mickey van der Ven, who's not completely proven, but is proven enough that you think, great, he can come into Tottenham and be a starter or close to a starter, you know, that kind of profile player. But they're typically between 40 and 60 million pounds, roughly. Of course, there's tons of variation in that. So you're probably talking about getting 3 of those a season maximum. But I think at the point Ange came in, we were at a point where we had 5 players from a 25-man squad that we were considering keeping. Yeah. So he needed to get 20 players in the space of 2 years, and therefore the budget wouldn't work if you stretched it that way. But another area we don't do well in is selling players to allow us to refresh these squads. And I think if you look at Chelsea, and I hate to use Chelsea as any example or give them any credit, especially under Todd Bowley, but everyone goes on about how much they spend and how did they survive PSR. Well, they raised they spent 238 million last summer, but raised 200 million through sales. So they're much better at saying, sorry, Mason Mount, you've got loads of potential, but I'm going to get rid of you and I'm going to spend that 60 million quid on these 2 players. And whereas I think a Spurs goes, oh no, come on, Richie's still got it. Let's give him another season or 2. Oh, come on, like, it's Heung-Min's son. You can't sell Heung-Min's son. You keep this guy. And then we get that sentiment. And then even with Harry, I feel like we knew he was going. We risked that. It could have been very easy that Harry said, I'm staying. 6 months later, signs a free deal with someone else. And we've got no money. We don't have enough money in the next summer to rebuild. So do we need to look at some of these players in the squad and look to sell them this summer? Are there any that stand out to you that you think, actually, yeah, let's cash in and use it apart this rebuild so we can get other players in that we need?
Richarlison is probably the jump out example, isn't he? Where he's not really. I like him. I like him as a person. I think he seems like a really good bloke, but he's just not doing what we need him to do. When he's fit and he's firing, he can. But the problem is, who buys it? You know, if he's injured most of this season, who's going to give you money for him? Yeah, you might be able to get. It's the
first part of that equation, Ben, that's the trouble, isn't it? When he's fit.
Exactly. Yeah, when he's fit, which is just never the case. So, and then I think contract-wise, Bissouma and Bentancur, I think I might be right in saying they're both maybe end of next season or something like that. So I wonder if they might look at potentially moving one of those on if they don't renew. And Bissouma, what's he now, 28? And again, I don't dislike both, but there is an argument saying neither is the perfect fit. They've both got certain attributes that are good. So maybe one of those guys, and then the other one. That's got the contract running down is probably Romero. So, you know, if Madrid do stump up 80 million, 100 million, do you take the money and run? People see it as a sign of weakness sometimes, but it's not. Like you say, you've got to sell in a PSR world because that funds the players you want to buy. So, you know, if that sort of money comes through, I like Romero. I'd keep him. I think he's pivotal to our build-up play. But, you know, it may be a necessary sacrifice, and you hopefully invest that money well, bring in Vuskovic, whoever it might be, and sort of go from there.
Yeah, I tend to agree with quite a lot of that, Ben. Yeah, I think that Romero would be the one where if a big bid comes in, I think could you see Dragoshin alongside Van der Ven? I think you could. He's not as good a ball player, but he's good in the air. He's better in the air than Romero is.
Yeah.
And he's a tough tackler. He's the one that will go and press the ball with Van der Ven covering in the sweeper. You could see that. He's not as good a ball player as Romero, and I think that's where the worry would be, to your point, Ben, is that he is pivotal. All of our build-up play from the back goes through Romero, doesn't it? So you'd either have to train him up or look for someone else. But that's where your big money is in Romero if Madrid come knocking, for sure.
Then again, like with the Romero, he's still got 3 years left. So I'm kind of thinking like, keep him for another year. Then when he gets to, and also just play it by ear. If Madrid come and say, I'll give you 100 million quid, you go, fine. but you don't go out your way to push him out the door because he's a key player that's difficult to replace. But you also have to look at like what other clubs have done better than us. It's just swallowing their losses at the right time. We've swallowed our losses once the player has to have their contract terminated. We've done that 3 times in recent years. And other clubs like Chelsea, look at Lukaku. You know, they signed him for 90, but they were like, screw it, we're never going to get more than 10 at this rate. Just let him go for 30. And I kind of felt like at Richarlison, we could go Fulham, Marcus Silva, you love Richarlison, 10 million quid is yours. Just get him off the books, accept the loss, move on, use that 10 million to go towards next summer's budget and free up those. We won't. We'll sweat it out. We won't get the backup in that we should be there who's more consistent. And then he'll go on a free. And then we've got another player we need to buy later on.
The other thing that Chelsea do very well is they sell their academy players very effectively as well. So they will be getting 15, 20 million for academy players that have had a sniff of a first team appearance in the Carabao Cup.
Yeah,
they do that very well. They snap up players very young, they pay well, and then they flog them off. And City do that quite well through their academy as well. You'll see City, if you look at City's books there's quite a big chunk of money there that goes on players that you've never heard of because they come from City or Chelsea together.
Well, they sold. It goes wrong for them occasionally, but they sold Cole Palmer as an example. They're not scared to flog a young player and get 30 million quid to bring in and go towards a player they need more immediately, rather than risking it.
Yeah.
We would never have sold Donnelly, and now he can't get a game in League One. We probably could have got 10 million quid for him at that point. He was a big name across the academies. But Stu sent quite an interesting thing, which makes me feel a little bit more positive. And we discussed this before. Here's Arsenal's results, because I know people hate me going to Arsenal, but their project is similar to ours because they have similar revenues. They're a similar size club. They've got the same challenges ahead of them in terms of having to beat City and Chelsea and Liverpool with more money, having to look at a long-term approach. And they're going through a transition that was very tough at the start. So this is Arsenal in their second season as well. Between mid-October and 19th of December, the run of games. Man City away, lost. Leicester away, lost. Leicester at home, lost. Man United away, won. Villa at home, lost 3-0. Leeds United away, drew. Wolves at home, lost. Tottenham, lost. Burnley, lost. Southampton, drew. Everton, lost. 1 win in 10, sat 14th in the league. 5 points from a possible 30.
Was that his second full season, or he was about 18 months, or his first full season?
Yeah, that was his first full season, I think. So he came in halfway through the previous season, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I'm trying to imagine our fan base in that run of form. I mean, the sky would be falling down.
Could you imagine that now?
No, yeah.
When actually, in reality, we've only lost 1 in 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
and one of those wins was a 4-0 against City away. Don't forget.
Yeah. And I'm not really having this. I've seen a couple of people say, "Yeah, but City, it doesn't. City are in a bad run of form. They're missing a few players." It's like, well, you can't do that and then explode at our bad results because we're in a bad run of form. We're missing even more players. So you can't just discount a win just because you want to moan about the losses. It doesn't work like that.
Mm. And it used to be normal that Spurs would have a really good build up to Christmas and then a terrible after Christmas, or the other way around. It was always like, I think under Jose we were top of the league at Christmas, and then completely imploded. And I don't think we even got top 6 that season. I think we might come 7th. And we've had other seasons where it's been terrible before, and we've ended up, I think we've come 4th from being outside the top 6 and had a terrible run in that City season where we beat them in the last game. But we've had plenty of examples of this, and I think it just is what we're going to see this year. I think the bad results are going to continue right up until January, and it's going to get worse before it gets better because we are going to bomb out 1 or 2 of these cups that everyone's desperate to win because we don't have the squad for it, and we'll end up probably clutching on to one of the FA Cup, the League Cup, or Europa League. So we're still in that one at least. Injured players start to come back, and we start to pick up some league form again, and we go. Imagine where we'd have finished if we hadn't had that terrible run over November and December.
I think some of the angst and some of the vitriol online is coming from when you look at 6 games that we have either drawn or lost this season against teams that we would probably expect to finish above. in Leicester, Palace, Ipswich, Fulham, Bournemouth and Brighton. Brighton, okay, that's borderline, might be above. But if we were going to put our nuts on the line at the opening day of the season, we'd probably say we'll finish 1 or 2 places above Brighton. If we finish 5th, they might finish 6th or 7th. We've taken 2 points out of those possible 18. That's against those teams, and there's only one time we've had a better XG. So it's not as if we're playing them off the park and we've been unlucky. You take Bournemouth last night, 3.7 XG against our, I think it was 0 point something, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that's where some of the frustration comes, where you can't use Man City as a benchmark, but when you see that you can play like that, and then you have such a drop off to the Fulham and the Bournemouth game, that's what's causing the cognitive dissonance, if you like, in our fan base. And some of that abuse last night, fellas, I would never boo, but I can understand the booing, right? But not the FC word, you fat C, and Ange Postecoglou that was being shouted. And he's like, listen, I've got to take it, but it's not nice.
What are people hoping for? How's
exactly.
that?
How's that helping?
Yeah, what are you aiming for with that? It's just all that's doing.
Yeah.
Is
I'll go then.
Yeah, exactly. It's all right. I'll be better at my job. Like, it's not. Yeah, there's so many
I
reasons.
Won't be shit next week.
We'll win our next 10 then.
God,
it's ridiculous.
Thanks so much for the feedback.
Yeah,
he doesn't. Ange Postecoglou doesn't lay awake at night thinking that Dave guy in the crowd who called me a fat prick. I'm gonna prove him wrong. It is my legacy in life now to prove that guy wrong. I'm actually going to turn up on time tomorrow and do my job properly because of what Dave said to me. It's just so irrelevant. He doesn't even have to come over to you as the fans. Ange makes a big thing about trying to involve the fans more.
Yeah.
And yes, we are season ticket holders and go to games. We're not just saying this as people who don't go to matches, but your one job, and the away fans are normally amazing at this.
Yeah.
Our fans are normally some of the best in the league, our away fans. They bring a great voice, but I thought yesterday was the lowest I've ever thought of our away support doing that. And I know it's probably only a minority of them, but that doesn't help. That does not improve the scenario in any way.
No.
What do they want? What's the outcome? Sacking Ange would be absolutely crazy. You could bring in Pep and he'd struggle just as much with the situation we have at hand.
Yeah, I can't think of any team in the league who could, with your goalkeeper out, your 2 centre-backs out, a lot of people running on fumes, your defensive midfielder out, you got Venticor. So, there's just this the spine of our team. Solanke's been out as well.
Yeah.
Kulusevski had to be rested the other day. We're running on empty. And I don't think you could remove the spine. Man City got so much sympathy for having Rodri out, and Arsenal got so much sympathy for having Odegaard out. Try adding another 5 names onto that. It's
And it's not just, we talked about this last week, Jim, on the pod. It's not just the match day experience there. It disrupts your training, your prep. You've got these 7 players missing that are fundamental to the style of play you're trying to build. It affects everything during those time that the players are injured. So it's not just, they should just turn up on the day. It's all of the prep work and everything. You're trying to get players that aren't usually involved in that, in the centre of it. Fringe players coming in, trying to play the role of players that are out. And that also is going to take time,
Of
And
course.
the plan for these youngsters wouldn't have been to chuck you in and have the minutes that they're having to have now. It just isn't on their development.
Yeah.
Ange mentioned it before. He said some of these players they signed are excellent players and they're more at the level. It wasn't the exact word he used, but he basically said they're at the level required and readiness. So, and Burival was one referenced to play in Europe in the Europa League, but not consistently in the Premier League. And that's all had to change very quickly, which I guess if you're looking for small silver linings will mean faster development for these players. They're getting more minutes than they would. It's going to have to make them mature more quickly. But overall, it's not a situation Postecoglou wants. He doesn't want to be sat there playing these guys as much as we don't want to. And then I just don't understand how calling him a fat idiot contributes to helping the situation when we're all in it together. And we should be doing the one thing we can as supporters. And that is, we discussed this last time, guys. You weren't on it, Ben, but it used to be when I went to the ground, we'd go 1-0 down, home or away, whichever one, and everyone would go on their feet and roar out or come on you Spurs as the ball was really kicked off. Almost like to lift the atmosphere back up. Now it's, terrible, screw you Tottenham, pathetic. It's just like, what? we may as well be the away support. With that, we're just making it worse. We're doing what the away fans do to our own players. So they go both ends of the pitches and get the same abuse.
Yeah,
Like, we're just making
it's hard because you don't want, like, without not blaming the fans here, but like the expectation and the entitlement, I think, is behind a lot of the underlying discourse, because like you say, it's not helping at the pitch. It's also not helping in terms of what people, you go back 18 months or 2 years before Postecoglou came in. I think people forget just how much of a mess we were in. Like, we were on the slide. We finished eighth, but we only just finished eighth, and we were on the way down. Then we lost our top scorer, our best player. He's probably our best box defender as well at times, from corners and things. So he was our all-round talisman, wasn't he? And we lost him. We had to replace most of the squad. Like you say, 20 odd players probably needed replacing. That doesn't happen in 18 months. We've been slightly more consistent. We're probably level on points with Arsenal, and they're title challengers. And were we ever going to be title challengers within 1 season, 1.5 seasons? No. So I just think there's a level of expectation that's slightly unrealistic, and a level of entitlement that says we should beat Bournemouth, even though we're missing 6 of our first team starters. We should still beat Bournemouth. So why should we? They've got all of their team fit. They're a very good team. They've beaten Man City and Arsenal. Yeah, we want a better performance, but I just think sometimes there's a real want to have everything now. The ground fans want to be winning straight away. If they're not, 1-0 up by half time, they're annoyed, and and they want to win every game now. They want the rebuild to be done now, and unfortunately, these things, they don't happen on our timescales. They do take longer. If we want to do it properly, we need to give him the time to build the proper squad, and we need to give him the turbulent periods to work their way through. And hopefully, by starting next season, and people say it's always next season, but it has been, because we continually change managers and we continually change directors of football. We need to just tough it out for once, I think, because if we don't do it now, are we ever going to do it? Or are we just going to, forever go through this cycle of every 18 months, let's get a new manager?
Yeah, I think there's some good points in there, Ben. And I think if you then take a step above the football layer itself, Scott Munn and that recruitment team have only really been in place since August.
Yeah. True.
They because Scott Munn couldn't start until July. I think it was July, wasn't it, that he came on board, and they put the back of house staff in place. I think also the other thing is, people forget that lot down the road are where they are only because they endured it 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Yeah, and they're seeing the success, or I say success in inverted commas. They haven't actually had any success yet, really. But they're seeing the improvement that they're seeing down there, and we want that now. And the other thing that hasn't helped us this season is, for some reason, Chelsea have managed to pull their socks up and go from a disaster club, a skip fire of a club, to sitting second in the table and playing some nice football with a new manager. And that's sort of, people are pointing at that and going, well, we could have that. And, well, actually we can't, because we don't go and spend 1.2 billion in the transfer market across 3 seasons. It's
he's got 25 senior players. Like,
there you go.
Can't get rid of them. Like, they're loaning out Sterling and people like that, because they're overstocked. Whereas we're not in that. We haven't got that luxury, unfortunately. So
exactly.
Yeah, they had a different base to build off, didn't they? They had a base of players they could sell, move on, and replace. And we had a bunch of people that were like, does anybody want this football player? And we polish Sergio Reguilon up, put him on a wheelie trolley, and we put him out, and they go, anyone, with a little bucket, and no one puts a penny in.
No,
damn it.
Exactly.
Sergio Aurier, anyone? Better cancel another contract. And Ndombele, anyone? Better cancel another contract. And Lo Celso, no one wants him. Hill, no one wants him. Fuck. Where do we go from here?
That's why Arsenal, with their, I can't remember some of the players they had, but they had like Adebayor and Ozil they didn't want, and I can't remember who was they had like a Greek centre back, Socrates, Aubameyang. They wanted to get rid of all these. Exactly, and no one really wanted them, and they had to take a couple of years and loan them out and stuff like that. So they're a much better yardstick, I think, because they're in the same exact position we found ourselves in, and just 3 years ahead. So I do think, people say they're not a valid comparison, but they're absolutely the right comparison, because
totally the right comparison. And I just hope that we don't go down the AFTV route in the next few months when things are still tough, because that then just becomes toxic, doesn't it?
That's what worries me when you see people shouting at Ange and stuff, because that's well publicised. Daniel Levy's going to see that, and if now the problem is, people are going to ramp up the ENIC out stuff, because that's what happens when we're in bad form. When the pressure's on ENIC and Levy tends to then fire the manager and distract the fans out. So I do think there is an element of you can't. It's hard to disentangle that and say, no, I'm okay with Ange. I'm just annoyed. I'm going to boo the board and criticise Levy because they will take that on Ange. They're not going to resign. They're
there's
just
been
going to
loads of
hire a
it
new
knocking
manager.
around today online. The yellow and gold is out, and this is all down to Levy because he hasn't supported Ange apparently in the last 3 transfer windows. There's been no support for him, according to half this lot. It's ridiculous.
We are in this spot because of Daniel Levy's decisions, but not over the last 2 seasons, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like the last 2 seasons, we've put a structure in place we all wanted. We've finally got a manager playing the style of football we want. The recruitment's a lot better. We're using all that money from the stadium to go back into players. But because of 5 previous years of terrible recruitment, and then a couple of years of not spending enough because we were building the stadium before that, we've just left ourselves in a situation where there's several seasons worth of rebuilding to do in the space of 18 months. Whereas other clubs go, I'm 2 or 3 players short from getting where I need to be. Spurs go, I'm literally 20 of a 25-man squad away from where I need to be. I literally can't find 2 or 3 players that I can consistently rely on in my squad. When we came 8th, that was just because Harry Kane is Harry Kane. We would have come 12th, something like that. That kind of area of the table without him. We were that bad at the point Ange took over.
We massively overperformed to get 6th. That was everyone was tipping us for mid-table or below. Rival fans were saying we're going to be in a relegation battle. Some Spurs fans were saying that. So, I think getting 6th almost has created a rod for his own back because now people are saying if we get anything less than 6th, we've regressed. But the reality is we overperformed last season. We're still pretty early in this fairly major rebuild because, like you say, we just didn't have the blocks in place. We didn't have the clear structure, the clear strategy. The director of football, the manager kept changing, and it does all come back to Daniel Levy and some sort of poor strategic thinking, some lack of clear direction. But I do think those blocks have now been, and I put more stock than probably most in that. Do you remember there was that strategic review thing they did? They got in a third party, whatever, to do this, and I've been involved in some of those for work, and management don't tend to do that unless they know things are going really wrong because they know they're going to cop some pretty bad criticism. They will have done, and it sort of seems like to me after that they've started to say, all right, actually this sort of micromanagement, me deciding the direction every 18 months isn't really helping. And since then he seems to have taken a step back, and he's got Munn and he's got Langer, and we've gone down the data driven route, and we've gone down the manager aligns with all of that route. So I do think we've got the blocks in place, but even with those in place, it's going to take you 2 to 3 years, maybe even longer to really turn us around. And I hope that is with Ange, but if the pressure ramps up, I hope they don't bounce to a win now manager or to a back 3 manager. I hope it's a continuity manager who can sort of build on what Ange has done so far.
Yeah, I think that one thing, if we're going to use Arsenal as not the template, but certainly the journey that they've been on is very similar to the journey that we need to be on. One thing that they did do season on season, their improvement was a points improvement. So they had a small points, even though they finished 8th, they had a small points improvement on the first half of the year of Arteta being in. Then they improved slightly again in the second full season. And it was in season 3 that they really pushed on. And I think they made something like an 11 or 12 point improvement in that third season. And Liverpool did the same with Klopp. They had a small improvement year 1, better improvement year 2, and then there was a leap in year 3. So that's sort of the timescales that we're looking at, really. So hopefully we get a good run towards the end of the season, and we can improve on last year's points tally, irrelevant of where we come in the table. An improvement on points would be good, and then we need to kick on next year and see further. So it's the points for me that are the important piece, not necessarily the position. The position's false. Because if it's a weak league and you've got weak points, it doesn't show an improvement.
It's also, people when they look at football always think, imagine the other teams are all static and you just need to improve to get ahead of them. When there's 20 teams all simultaneously improving, spending lots of money every season. So you might have gotten better, but if the team's got even better than you got better, then you're falling behind. And that's the challenge. You just look at the form of the teams in the table, right? Aside from Liverpool, Chelsea and Arsenal, No one else has managed to string 3 wins in a row together this season.
No.
That's how inconsistent everyone is. The amount of points that separate Brighton in 5th on 23 to who have we got in on 20? Newcastle in 12th is there's 3 points between 5th and 12th for goodness sake. At 14 games into the season. It's not even like we're at the start. There's nothing in it. And it's crazy.
This is where it's not about beating your nearest rival or your nearest opponent. It's about focusing on what do you need at the end game to be, where you pretty much you got a good idea to win the league. You need to be high 80s, low 90s, unless you're a Man City nonsense season where they got 100 points. But if you hit high 80s, low 90s, you're going to be in with a shout at the title. If you anything sort of like on a sliding scale beneath that, roughly the same level of points are going to get you the same level in the league. And, if you look at a professional sprinter, they don't think, well, I want to beat him. They like, right, I've got to get 9.92 or 9.96 really to win this. I know if I do my job and I get that, I'm going to win. And it's irrelevant of what the others do. You don't play to the others. You play to you and you play to your goals and your outcomes.
Yeah, exactly. You can't focus on the noise around you. I just can't believe when you look at it, 11 points. 11 points separate Ipswich in the relegation zone and Brighton in 5th. 14 games into the season, that's 3 wins separate. It's just, there's
never
nothing.
Been like this. I can't remember the table being like this after 14 games.
I quite like it, to be honest. It's good, isn't it? It's quite exciting, isn't it? Yeah, it's like, because a couple of wins and we could be up in, 4th and 5th again. Whereas a couple of losses and,
Yeah, what was it? It was the Ipswich game. If we'd have won that, we'd have gone 3rd.
Yeah, yeah.
It used to be a top 6. It used to be a top 2 and then 4 teams that made up the rest of the top 6, right, typically in a season. You have 2 teams running away with it in a race and then 4 other teams scrapping for those 2 top 4 places. Now it feels like there's a top 3 or top 4 maybe, and then about 10 teams who are the 5th and 6th. Because you've got Villa, who have got lots of money and ambition and are doing really well. Fulham are on the rise. Bournemouth are doing amazing. Brentford are doing amazing. Newcastle have been on the resurgence. You've got Man United. You've got West Ham even throwing more money at players than every other team in Serie A put together. It's just insanely competitive now. Yeah. It's crazy.
As an Opta said that 5th spot, I think it's something like 80%. I know they can get these wrong, but like something like 80% likelihood that will go to the Premier League next season. So that battle for that 5th spot is going to be really interesting second half of the season because there's going to be about 8 teams trying to get that one Champions League place. We're going to be one of them. And every week you're going to be looking at so many other teams. Like you say, it's just going to be, you won't be able to keep up with all that. You just have to focus on trying to get those wins and just trying to edge every single one of them.
At this rate, half the Championship's going to fancy qualifying for the Champions League.
Yeah.
I think so. Right, guys. Quick touch on Chelsea, then I need to wrap up. But any quick predictions for that game? We've got to do it. I think it's tradition.
Can't be too optimistic, isn't it? I guess Romero going to be back is a big question because if not, is it Dragozin and Gray? Yeah, which I don't know. I didn't go into Bournemouth confident. I'm not going into Chelsea particularly confident, but I don't like to predict a loss to Chelsea. So I'll say head says maybe something like 3-1 Chelsea, but heart's going to go 2-0. So I'll say 2-0.
Yeah. My only crumb of comfort is that we do turn up against the bigger team. Well, we have turned up against the bigger teams this season. Even when we lost to Arsenal at home 1-0, we were the better side, and I think we deserved much more out of that game than we got. City good, turned up at United. It's it's the mentality of we should be finishing above these, therefore we haven't turned up. And that's what it looks like. I'm pretty sure it's not that, but it's what it seems like when you look at that list of teams I shared earlier on. So I think there'll be something, there'll be some reaction, there'll be a bit of a bounce back. I think I'm similar to you, Ben. My head says that it's a loss, but my heart says I'll take a 1-0.
Yeah. They do leave space, don't they? They leave space.
They do leave space. Yeah. And I'm guessing that Sonny was rested because of that. So Sonny will start on the left. Decky will come back into the middle. Maddison will get dropped. and Johnson will go out onto the right. Is what I'm
And Salah in
thinking.
those transitional games as well. He's normally pretty good. So
Yeah, he's a strong
you know,
runner. So
yeah.
listen, there's reasons to be cheerful, but that back line is a worry. A doggy's waiting for an injury.
Yeah. I do think
He
you
must
said it
be in the
earlier.
red zone. But
Yeah,
listen,
exactly.
short answer, Jim, 1-1.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go for 2-2 to cap it off.
Yeah.
3 score draws.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're all thinking a loss, but we can't say it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't dare say it.
2-2. I'm going for draw. I'll take a point. Let's just try get through this
sure.
Christmas period.
I think that's what we've got to do, isn't it? Just get to January now, get as many points as we can, try and get through the Carabao, try and get through the Rangers game, and regroup in January.
Yeah. All right. Well, up the Spurs.
Come on, you
roll
Spurs.
on,
Spurs.
roll on Sunday. Come on, you Spurs.